In this class we will do more about the chapter drainage. Okay, so today we'll do peninsular rivers and some more topics. So in peninsular rivers, let's note down some characteristics. They perform little erosional activities. It means they don't do much erosion. Erosion. And second, they have short courses in comparison to the Himalayan rivers. So you can see they have shorter courses, and most of the major rivers, most of the major peninsular rivers flow towards the east, flow eastwards. So in the context of major or the main rivers, there are two exceptions. Several small streams and rivers do travel towards west, but only two major rivers, which are substantial in size, travel towards west, which are Narmada and Tapi. So besides these, most of the major rivers flow towards the east, like Krishna, Godavari, Mahanadi, etc. Narmada and Tapi. And of course, they're seasonal in nature, seasonal, or we can say non-perennial, which means that they don't hold water for the entire year. During the monsoon season they thrive, while in the dry season, in the summer seasons, they become dry and often have no water. Even the major rivers like Godavari have reduced flow of water, so the many streams would obviously have negligible to no water supply. Of course, they come from, or you can say originate from plateaus, and springs. This is quite in contrast to the Himalayan rivers, which originate from glaciers. So that's why Himalayan rivers are perennial, because as the glaciers have a never-ending or a huge amount of water supply in the form of ice, which constantly melts. So the rivers have quite a reliable and assurable amount of supply of water. That's why Himalayan rivers are perennial. So anyways, let's continue with peninsular rivers. And the west flowing rivers, which are Narmada and Tapi, which are exceptions kind of, because most of the main rivers of peninsular rivers travel towards the east, but these exceptions travel towards west and make estuaries. So what are estuaries? One second. Towards west and make estuaries. So basically estuaries are coastal areas or something like that. Coastal areas which are partially enclosed. The coastal areas partially enclosed, where the fresh water from the various streams and rivers meets the salt water from the oceans, the seas. Okay, so basically estuaries are the coastal areas partially enclosed by the fresh water meets the salt water. And the east flowing rivers, which is the majority of the peninsular rivers, flow east towards actually they flow east and drain in the Arabian Sea. So these flowing rivers, which are the majority of the peninsular rivers, flow east and drain into the Arabian Sea, forming deltas at their mouth. So basically, what do you mean when we say deltas? They form deltas at the mouth. Basically, mouth means the area where the river meets the ocean, forming deltas at the mouth. So basically, that piece of land surrounding it, etc. So basically, what are deltas? We'll do that in just a second. First let's do that. Deltas. Basically, deltas are low, flat land in which numerous river channels, actually in which the river separates, with the river into many, so we can into numerous channels, separates into numerous channels, or we can say branches, separates and enters the sea. Sea. And deltas are generally triangular in shape. And now that we've come to deltas, we can also do floodplains. What are floodplains? So floodplains are low lying ground area. So basically, area of low lying ground adjacent to a river. And so it is composed of river sediments, which is basically the sediments which the river deposits from the erosion done in the upper courses. And this area, the floodplain, is subject to flooding, which means there's a high possibility of flooding in the floodplain since they're adjacent to a river. So now let's revise what we've done. We've done peninsular rivers. So what were peninsular rivers? They were rivers which performed little erosional activities. They were rivers which had short courses. They were rivers which mostly flowed towards the east. They were rivers which were seasonal and non-perennial. They were rivers which originated from plateaus or springs. They were rivers which mostly drained into the Arabian Sea, forming deltas at their mouths. However, the exceptions which travelled westwards flowed towards the west and made estuaries like Narmada and Tapi. And what are estuaries? These are coastal areas partially enclosed where the fresh water from the streams and the lakes and the rivers meets the salt water from the ocean and the seas. So what are deltas? They are the low flat land in which the river into numerous channels or branches separates and enters the sea. So basically, deltas are triangular in shape generally. Like if we see the various deltas, they will be triangular in shape. The floodplains, these are areas of low-lying ground adjacent to a river. They are composed of river sediments and are subject to flooding. Since they are quite close to a river, flooding may occur quite frequently depending upon the river flow, the rainfall, etc. Now we've done this, and the next topic will be viewing the west flowing rivers Narmada and Tapi separately, doing them in more detail. So Narmada. So what do you know about Narmada? So essentially the Narmada river, the Narmada river has several characteristics, you can say. First, it originates from the Amarkantak hills. So it originates from the Amarkantak hills and then flows west through parts of Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, and through rift valleys. Basically, so flows through rift valley. It's a type of valley, and when it comes to states, flows through parts of basically flows through parts of Madhya Pradesh, and Gujarat. And so flowing west, it drains into Arabian Sea. Actually, one small change, very sorry, but this one, like the east flowing rivers flowed east and then into the Bay of Bengal, not the Arabian Sea. Sorry. Into the Bay of Bengal. Of course, as the Arabian Sea is towards the west of India, so the west flowing rivers will common sense move towards there, and the east flowing rivers will drain into Bay of Bengal. I'm really sorry for it. So the Narmada river originates from the Amarkantak hills, flows through Rift Valley, flows through parts of Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat, flows west, it drains into Arabian Sea. So in its course, basically in its path, it creates many picturesque locations like Dhodar Falls. We can like the example. It creates, so in its course, okay, so in its course it creates many picturesque locations, like very beautiful locations. Basically, like Dhodar Falls. It's a very beautiful falls if you've ever seen it. Quite a serene and a calm atmosphere with the calming sound of water pounding on the rocks. Do visit it if you ever visiting that site. Do visit this place. It's quite a experience to remember. Wow. So now we have done Narmada river and we'll come to Tapi river. Again, first wonder, what do you gather from the Tapi river? Do you know any facts about it? So basically it rises the Satpura range. Basically, Satpura is a mountain or a hill range. So it's a mountain range. Satpura range in Betul district. Betul district. Let's write it down in caps. It will emphasize the importance of the word. In Betul district in Madhya Pradesh. Basically, these rivers, these both, the Tapi and the Narmada, especially Tapi, flow quite significantly through Madhya Pradesh. So, also flows through rift valleys like Narmada river. Basically, it flows parallel to Narmada river, but is shorter in length. It's parallel, or you can see this, the math symbol, parallel to Narmada river. Narmada river, and but is shorter in length. But it is shorter in length. And you know why it is shorter? Or why Tapi is generally shorter than other rivers? This is because the coastal plains between the Western Ghats, the coastal plains between Western Ghats and the Arabian Sea is quite narrow. So small river. So actually, the coastal rivers are small only. So coastal rivers are generally smaller. And now the Tapi river covers, or it's the basin of the Tapi river covers parts of Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat and Maharashtra. You might have noticed we are using the word Rift Valley quite often. Basically, what is Rift Valley? So as the name quite suggests, the rift means like a crack or something. So Rift Valley is formed is formed on a divergent plate Rift Valley is formed on a divergent plate boundary which is the crustal extension or the spreading apart of surface which is further deepened by erosion which the rivers perform. Okay, so Rift Valley is formed on a divergent plate boundary, which is the crustal extension or the spreading apart or the breaking apart of surface, basically which is the spreading apart of surface. It's deepened by the erosion process. So now we've done quite a lot of terms in this chapter, starting from drainage to peninsular rivers to deltas to floodplains to Narmada river to Tapi river and finally to Rift Valley. So do remember this and revise this before attending the next video. Thank you. Keep watching and continue subscribing.